Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We have all been involved with bullies. We have been a bully, a bullied, and someone who just watches perhaps, but we've all seen it, and we all have varying opinions of how damaging it can be. My guest this week on Consider This has definite and strong opinions about what bullying does. Meet Barbara Coloroso. She is a former nun, a former teacher, has worked in conflict resolution, a long and varied background, and her latest book is The Bully, the Bullied, and the Bystander, the three B's that, it's easy to remember the name of the book. I think it's a very memorable name. And this book, though not a total eye-opener to me, because I have been through bullying issues with, it does make me think about the dynamics of this kind of triad of bully, bullier, and bystander.
A triad that I consider three characters in a tragedy that we ignore at our kids' peril. Most of us are not bullies for the long haul. No. Nor are we bullied relentlessly. The majority of us are what I consider bystanders. And bystanders play a variety of roles. They can be the bully's henchmen, going right in there and doing the bully's bidding, or they can be the active supporters of the bully, or they could be the passive supporters, and you'll never know it except driving carpool. You hear your daughter say, "Do you know what we did to her in the bathroom?" Or "Do you know what we did to him in the lunchroom?" And getting pleasure from somebody else's pain, which is what bullying is about. You can also be the disengaged onlooker, and sorry to say, many of us adults, when our children are faced with bullying, become disengaged onlookers and say, well, it's just part of growing up. Boys will be boys, girls just want to be mean. Not everybody gets invited to a birthday party. Then on the opposite side of the bully circle are the potential witnesses. But they're still bystanders because they're so afraid to step in. They're sick to their stomachs about the bullying, but if I step in, I'll be the next target. Or I'll do it wrong and mess it up, make it worse. Or if I report it, I'll be accused of ratting on my peers. But at the very top of the bully circle, the antithesis of the bully is what we want all of our children to be, and that's witnesses. Somebody willing to stand up and speak out, to make a difference, to step in, to act with integrity, civility, and compassion. Our only hope is to break that cycle of violence so that we don't have to worry just about the bully. Because today we have to worry about the targeted kid who...
Well, we saw that with Columbine.
Oh,
We've seen it play out
Littleton, Colorado.
over and over again. But let's just take a break here.
Sure.
And talk about, I read one statistic that you had in your book about one study that said 75% of preteens say that bullying is rampant.
It is rampant. It is rampant.
And I always remembered, since mostly it's adults watching this, I mean, I can remember being bullied in a limited way. I think during that part of your life where you're experimenting with the different roles.
Yes.
And then at some point, I think my group of friends, although we were gossipy and a little catty, decided that going real far with it just wasn't comfortable. Yeah. We were in a Catholic school, which doesn't mean we were good people. It can happen anywhere. But I think we had an environment around us and a bit of a conscience. Not that we were perfect, but we had some self-limiting.
But the conscience is important, a strong sense of self, and being able to act with integrity, civility, and compassion is something that is taught, just as bullying is taught. You have to be taught to bully. It's not a normal, natural part of growing up, any more than being compassionate is a normal, natural thing that you don't have to learn somewhere. One of the mistakes we make in bullying is we view it as a conflict. Two kids are going to fight. Sibling rivalry is normal. Next time your children fight, I want you to say they're normal. Children who do not fight grow up to make lousy spouses. If you've been married to somebody who doesn't engage in conflict, you know what I'm talking about. Keep the peace, don't bring it up, let it go. Conflict is normal. Violence is not a part of handling conflict healthily.
So but violence isn't just hitting.
Yeah, oh no, it isn't. No,
striking out.
No, but bullying is not normal, and it is a learned behavior. You've got two kids fighting over TV, normal. They have to learn how to resolve that. You can help them out. But you walk in, and there is your daughter with your son's arm up his back, and the kid's screaming in pain. And you rush in there. As soon as your daughter sees you, she drops her brother's arm and starts comforting him. I don't know what's the matter, Mom. I don't know what he's crying about. And you say, what are you screaming about? And the way your daughter looks at her brother gives him a very quick clue that I better keep my mouth shut, because if I say anything, it'll get worse when Mom leaves, because bullying is often done under the radar of adults. Now let's move that back a moment. Yeah, move that back a moment. When you rushed in there, you saw something you didn't want to see, but it was there. She was smiling before she saw you. Bullying is about taking pleasure from somebody else's pain. It's not about anger. It's not about conflict. It's truly about contempt for another human being. And that sounds awfully harsh for that 7 or 8-year-old who's calling somebody a name. But when I consider somebody worthless or inferior to me or undeserving of respect, I can absolutely do anything to that person and not feel shame or compassion. I can tie a Matthew Shepard up after I've beaten him up, tie him to a fence to die, him, and say, but he was gay, because I have contempt for him. I can be driving down the road with friends on a Friday and see a black man walking and say, oh, let's drag him behind a pickup and decapitate him because he's black. Whenever.
But people might say to you, that is so, I'm playing devil's advocate.
You can.
That is so unusual that someone would take those extraordinary measures because they have some huge big C contempt. I guess for the camera would be the other way. For someone. But it plays out in
lots of different ways.
Small ways.
Let's look at the 3 ways kids bully to start with. The majority of bullying that boys and girls do, equally well by the way, is verbal bullying. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me is an absolute lie. It can be deadly. So that's the most common form of bullying, and one of the things that you and I didn't grow up with is one of the fastest ways to use verbal bullying today, and that's on the internet and with cellular phones, text messaging, or calling somebody up and leaving a message, which you and I couldn't do years ago,
in fact,
or leaving somebody out of a chat room.
Leaving someone out of a chat room.
Why you talk about them, and they know they've been shut out.
And they've been shut out, and they know who was on there.
Yes.
Or
spreading a rumor about somebody. I was working at, you mentioned a Catholic school, I was working at a very elite private school. It's rampant wherever we go today. And working with leaders. These were 11th and 12th grade boys and girls. And I said, what about sexual bullying here? Verbal sexual bullying. Nobody said anything except tittered a little bit. And finally one girl said, see those boys over there? They scored every one of us girls on a scale and then put it on the internet. That's bullying.
But you know, one of the most popular
bullying
thing on TV right now is to verbally bully people that want to be the American Idol, the hottest thing, the next country singer, and the comments that are made.
Crude.
I mean, this is one of the hottest fads. First it was reality
Doesn't
TV.
make it right.
And now it's, no, but I mean.
Plato, what, 300 BC said, why do we allow casual people to put into our children's minds something we would not want them to have when they grow older? He was saying that 300 BC, but now we have.
So let's get rid of the
really
internet. You can't watch TV.
No, not get rid of it.
Forget those video games like, what was it, Grand
Theft Auto 3.
I didn't know there were like rapes in it.
Yeah, you take a prostitute, you have a dalliance with her, get points. Throw her out on the street, smash her head, you get more points. What does that teach young boys about girls? Which can lead to sexual bullying. So yes, it does have an influence. Does it make kids do that? No.
But it's cumulative.
It's a thread in the fabric of their lives. Now, how many of those threads are in their lives will greatly influence how they react to other human beings and respond to other human beings. So we have the verbal bullying. A very small number of boys will resort to physical bullying. That actually is the least amount of bullying done. And they'll threaten it, but they won't do it. An even smaller number of girls will resort to physical bullying because they don't need to. They have in their social arsenal something far more powerful: shunning, rumor, gossip, and exclusion. These are powerful forms of bullying. We got a group of girls over here in middle school saying, she's new. We don't want her to sit with us. She comes to sit down, puts the foot on the table. No room here. Shuns her by just turning their backs.
Why? What? All right, let's go to school for a minute. I'm sure teachers and then the various aides that are employed to work lunchrooms, or however, every school has kind of a different system. I'm sure that many of them, especially with budget cuts going on now and the class sizes are going back up after they came down for a while, are pretty much, I'm not justifying, but are pretty overwhelmed by just getting through the day.
Yes.
And I'm sure that many can and do take a stand on bullying, and many schools can and do. But it seems to me, you talk about the radar. I mean, a teacher would almost have to be going around all the time.
No, we have
in the lunchroom and kind of keeping an eye out for that.
We need two things. We need a lot more adult supervision if we really are making a commitment to an anti-bullying policy.
Money.
I know it, but money, or what are our kids worth it? Are they worth it? Are they worth that kind of money? And we have to have in place, it's what I call 3 Ps, a strong anti-bullying policy that first of all defines bullying for what it really is, not a conflict where we take a targeted kid and the bully and force us to reconcile, but a strong anti-bullying policy, anti-bullying procedures in place that deal with the bully effectively, make sure the targeted kid feels safe in the school, and deals with the bystanders effectively and gives them a way to become witnesses. And the third P is probably the most important. We have to have a long-term commitment to have anti-bullying programs in place, from our curriculum to the way we treat kids to the way we invite kids to treat one another. Can we teach them in an environment that does not have the psychological advantages that are fertile soil for bullying? And those 3 things are a sense of entitlement. Is there any group in school that feels they're more entitled than another group?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, and it's not because I was not an athlete, and I didn't grow up in the era of women's athletics. But
me either.
But
half-court basketball, or maybe.
But the male jock was an entitlement.
It still is. I'm from Littleton, Colorado. I write about in my book the Columbine situation, the massacre. 3 weeks before the massacre, a group of football players had circled 2 boys in the lunchroom. There were adults present in the lunchroom, unobservant, disengaged onlookers, so to speak. And these boys were laughing. Now, looking at them, without really seriously looking at them, they looked like they were having fun. But they were truly bullying because they were having fun at 2 boys' expense. They had circled 2 small boys and were squirting them with ketchup packets and calling them fag and queer. Now, how do we know that happened? Eric, who laid siege to the high school 3 weeks later, wrote about it in his suicide note and said, this is only one of the many things those boys did to me. He had to go to class with mustard and ketchup stains all over him. And it was interesting, as he wrote all the things those entitled boys did to him and others in the school, at the very bottom he said, parents, this is how you raised your kids, it's payback time. Now that doesn't justify what he did, but it certainly explains some of the rage. And we don't have to worry just about bullies. We have to worry about targeted kids who cannot take it anymore, whose pain goes unheard.
Well, it tends to go one of 2 ways.
Implode, kill yourself.
Or some self-damaging, or explode.
Or both. Where you strike out indiscriminately and then kill yourself.
What if I said bullying has always been around, it always will be around. Yes, we could probably do something to help it, but we can't eliminate bullying. We can't make sure that our children are not the subject of bullies. We cannot make sure that our kids aren't bullies. And we can't make sure that our kids are always going to make the right choice on whether to go from bystander status to witnessing.
Exactly. As a school teacher, I always said I need to do all I can do, and that's all I can do. But if my job is to raise this next generation up to survive in this world where bullying is just a matter of course, then I ought to get out of teaching. It's to survive in this world and make it a better place. I want to raise this generation to not act with a sense of entitlement. The other two is a liberty to exclude and an intolerance toward differences. Whenever I see those three things, that is fertile soil for bullying. So I want to make sure in our settings at home, school, and community that we do everything we can to reduce that. Do we have things like a mascot that's only masculine?
And you notice this very institution has a rather hormone-filled looking maverick.
Which is fine if it's a male, and a male gets to wear a male mascot. But we're asking young women to wear a male mascot. But I'll bet there'd be a bit of a hue and cry if we asked the boys to wear a gentleman U. First of all, it's biologically impossible to be a gentleman U, but we ask girls to be Lady Rams. Think about it. And people would say, I wouldn't want a boy wearing a female thing. Why? Because it would diminish him. Why? Because we hold boys above girls. So that is a climate of entitlement.
Well, the Golden Gophers don't have a real problem. I haven't seen the mascot, but at least a gopher can be
either or.
Yeah.
And you don't call one the lady and the other the real. You call them both, either lady and gentleman or that team and that team, where you give them equal status. And not just in sports. Do we say that we don't have a hierarchy in our classes? Or do nerds over here, and we have mentally retarded kids over here? Or can we create community in the school? Not that everybody has to be friends with everybody.
No,
but they must.
That's a little unrealistic, very unrealistic.
Horribly unrealistic in the real world. But I must learn to treat you with civility, whether I like you or not, because it is a humane thing to do. And it is not humane to verbally bully you, physically bully you, or relationally bully you.
You know, one of the things you mentioned about, and I'm not going back to the computer games to belabor it, but you know,
I could belabor
the quickness and
yes.
the quick response. I recently went to a lecture that was on a whole different topic, but it came back to studies that had shown that reflective thinking in our young people is diminishing because of this. We're like building up the muscle that makes us react quickly, but we are losing the power. Our young people are losing the power of what they call reflective thinking, which means think, and that has to do with taking the time to think of how I felt when this happened, how my friend felt when this happened.
That's compassion, to be able to walk into
But first you have to be able to, even if you have to be able to do something with you might have an image, this isn't right or it's right, but you're quickly going to go on to something else. It's gone.
Well, that's what games do, those kinds of games, is teach our kids to react, not respond. And so we do run a risk if that is a major thread in their tapestry, the fabric of their lives. If it is a small part of their fabric, that's one thing.
And
it'll have a different influence than if that is a major fabric in their lives and they have violence at school, they have violence at home and in the community. Then we've got a real serious problem.
And parents are living a different kind of reactive life. Their lives are full, their children's lives are full, school activities usually. And so in a different way, for different reasons, we're not maybe observing. It took me a while to really observe that my son was being bullied, to the point where I had to move him from one district to another because their policy was just too, they didn't want trouble at the school.
Two things are happening there though. One of it is we'd really like to not think it's happening. It hurts us, it cuts at our heart when it's our kid. My son, who is an artist, started school at 5 years old, short. My husband's 5'4" if he fluffs his hair up. We're not talking great height potential here. He's little, black curly hair, big eyes. He's an artist, musician, skater, and a loudmouth.
Kind of a wimp.
Yeah.
Kind of a, the kind of thing they say,
yeah.
a nerd or a wimp or one of the natural targets because he's more intellectual than he is athletic.
Natural target, isn't that interesting? The one thing all targeted kids have in common with any other targeted kid is somebody targeted them. Because of a bias.
Natural talent is almost
because of a bias
oxymoron.
we have.
They're not natural. I mean, they are natural. That's who they are.
But we have a bias against them because they're not fitting that group that we've said is the best group. And where does that come from? South Pacific is an old music call.
They even remade it with Glenn Close.
There's a song in South Pacific. You have to be taught to hate. You have to be carefully taught to hate before you're 6, 7, or 8 to hate the people your parents hate. Bullying is a learned behavior. Holding one group over another is a learned behavior. Seeing a stereotype, adding to that a prejudice, combines to discriminate against another human being. You have to learn that. So how are we teaching it to our kids? And we are. You know, when I wrote the book, here's my little son. His older sister, only a year older, 3 little boys decided to target him. She ran to the teacher, and the teacher said, "Maria, we don't tattle on the playground." The poor kid was distressed because the teacher hadn't discerned herself the difference between telling and tattling, or ratting and reporting, and there's a world of difference between those two. She came home so distressed. Joey was ashamed of having been targeted, because kids are ashamed of being targeted. And so when it finally reached the point as it reached with your son, I went to the school, and the teacher said, "Well, you know, if Joey didn't do this and this and this, let's blame the target. He wouldn't have been picked on." What we have to realize as adults is that the one thing all targeted kids have in common is somebody decided to target them. You can be targeted because you're new. You can be targeted because you're tall.
Because you're rich, or you're poor, depending on...
Or beautiful, as Miss America.
Or ugly, in quotes.
Or you develop early if you're a girl.
Oh, then you're easy.
Develop late if you're a boy.
Then you're wimpy.
And what can kids do about that? A young woman came up to me holding my book. She was in her 20s, and she had the most gorgeous flaming red hair. And that's what I thought, flaming red hair. And she said, "It wasn't until I read the book that I realized it was not my fault in 9th grade that girls set fire to my hair."
Oh, she had flaming red hair.
She had flaming red hair.
And that very
And what
painful.
had happened was her parents, the school counselor, and then the social worker, because they had her go to a social worker, said, "What did you do to make those girls so angry with you that they would set your hair on fire?"
All right, okay.
First of all, they weren't angry. They had absolute contempt for her. It may have been rooted in jealousy, but in the end, it's contempt.
It's contempt. One of those things that just twists just a little and it becomes something else.
Yeah.
All right. So, in a few minutes,
Yeah.
what are the most important things that we can do in an environment? I know we've gone to extremes like zero tolerance, where kids
Which
have
is
been
zero
expelled
thinking.
for bringing this,
It's zero thinking.
you know, things to school that there was no intent.
There are some don'ts. What you
Okay.
don't want to do is minimize, rationalize, or explain away a bully's behavior. It is serious, and we need to pay attention.
And everyone gets damaged in this milieu.
We all do. All 3 characters are seriously affected.
Because a bully, in fact, sometimes a bully was once bullied.
Could be, or
And, then they can bully their children. Or
Yeah.
I mean,
if you become character typed, so that we always cast you
Typecast,
as
yes.
typecast. You're the right word. You're in TV, not me. Typecast as a bully, then you never learn appropriate social skills, and you misuse your leadership skills. Bullies truly do have leadership skills. So
I
when
mean, they're able to marshal some forces in the first place.
they are, but it's what a misuse of that gift that they have. So I want to get them to do 3 things: be good, do good, and will good. I want to give them opportunities to do that, but they also need to be held highly accountable for what they did. And the targeted kid, we need to honor the gifts that those kids come with at school and not diminish them, and deal with it immediately if it happens. We have this idea that if I didn't see it, I don't deal with it. Well, since it's under the radar of adults often, we can't minimize it or rationalize it, but we also have to say to a kid, "I hear you. I'm here for you. I believe you, and you're not in this alone." We also have to say to the targeted kid, "It's not your fault. You may have to change social skills and you may have to work on it, but it is not your fault that they targeted you. And there are things you can do." And I have a whole chapter in the book about different ways to handle verbal, physical, and relational bullying that allows the targeted kid to be assertive, not aggressive or passive.
Because either one of those
Or going to get them in
Or get 'em in
serious
trouble.
An aggressive response. I tell kids, don't fight back, and I get a lot of grief on that one. But I got to tell you, they did not target your son because he looked and acted like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They targeted him because they thought they could get him. They were bigger in number, bigger in size. And what I say to kids in physical situations is you defend yourself, but if you can possibly get out, get out. And as Trevor Romaine said in his book, Bullies Are a Pain in the Brain, he said, "Run, you'll look silly, but you'll look alive." I also want to teach them, if it's verbal bullying, to be able to stand there and let's say you gave me a very demeaning comment that was actually bullying to me, a verbal comment. I need to look you in the eye, stand up tall, open my chest, breathe deeply, and say, you know what? That's beneath both of us. That's assertive. I mean, how can you come back? I'm saying I'm not taking that in, and I'm inviting you to be more than you are. But if I said to you, as we often recommend targeted kids say, is, oh, please stop that, that hurt. That's fuel for the bully.
Oh, you're cowering, and a person that has contempt for you loves to see you cower.
Exactly. Now, if you're my friend, or even if you're just a very civil human being, if you accidentally did something to me, or were testing the waters, and
which happens so often when kids are young.
It does. Adults, we miss it sometimes. We miss a cue.
Learning cues.
Yeah.
And looking at, recognizing pain in someone's eye, and then reacting appropriately. Maybe we don't know what to do right at first, but we start to figure it out.
Surely we apologize, though. And so if I say to you, please, that hurts, you would, a person filled with compassion and integrity and civility would say, I'm so sorry. Let's try that one again. But a bully's going to say, gotcha. So we got to watch some of the lines we teach our kids. And most importantly is, I want to say to a targeted kid, you got to tell an adult, bullying is not something kids can handle all by themselves.
How do you know
afraid
who
to tell
trust?
her. Well, you've got to
tell a lot of adults.
Well,
or
no,
keep people posted when it happens.
You want to hear it as a parent, you got to be open to the good, the bad, and the ugly in your child's life. They've got to be able to come home and tell you anything, and not be, look, kid, if somebody hits you, you better hit him back, or I'm going to give it to you worse when you get home. You can't say to a kid, now, oh, I'm so proud of you, you got an A+. How can they come home with the B or the C, or the fact their clothes were torn because somebody attacked them? You know, they got to be able to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the line I give parents when a kid's saying anything is, talk to me about it. In Bowling for Columbine, Moore asked one of my least favorite singers, to Marilyn Manson, who was accused of being a part of the cause of Columbine because the boys liked his music. He's not one of my favorite
about
singers.
30 seconds here.
And Michael Moore said to him, what would you have said to those boys? And he said it so powerfully. He said, I wouldn't have said anything to them. I would have listened to what they had to say. We've got to listen to kids' pain. We have to be tuned into the pain that they're experiencing, and we have to do something to alleviate that pain. And a Holocaust survivor said it so beautifully. He said, you want to break the cycle? Pay attention, get involved, and never, ever look away.
Well, you've made it easy for me. You have so much to say that I didn't have to say much. The book...
feel strongly about the book.
And I should say that the Social Work College here had a symposium and gave out their Gandhi Awards, and perhaps you were an appropriate person to be here for a Gandhi Award because of your conflict resolution and kind of let's have a rational approach. The book is The Bully, The Bullied, and the Bystander. KidsAreWorthIt.com is where you can find her website, and you can find us at unotv.unomaha.edu. Have a peaceful, unbullying, unbullied week. See you next week.